Welcome to The PA is In, the show created by PAs for PAs, where codependency with your supervising physician is a thing of the past, optimal team practice is the future, and physician associate has taken the place of physician assistant as the professional title of choice. I'm Tracy Bingaman, and I'm obsessed with redefining what success as a PA looks like and what it feels like. Here you'll find the mindset shifts, systems, and processes I use to escape healthcare burnout and integrate my work into my life. Work-life balance is a myth, and an integrated life where you thrive professionally, not a balancing act, is the goal here. My mission is to help you to grow into a unicorn PA who loves their job, has abundant energy, time to spare, and work-optional financial freedom. The PA is in. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of The PA is In. Today we have a special guest, Aaron Block. Aaron is a PA who used the COVID pandemic as inspiration to go back to school to get his MBA. He then leveraged that into a non-traditional career working for the big bad insurance company. I can't wait for Aaron to share his story and tell you all about this journey and what options might exist for you outside of clinical medicine, working as a PA in the industry. Without further ado, here he is, Aaron Block. Aaron, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Of course, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
I would love it if you could just introduce yourself to our listeners, tell us a little bit about you and about your career path.
Sure. So I am an orthopedic PA by training. I went to Drexel, and I've always been in orthopedics kind of from day one. I I got my patient contact hours doing PT as an aide. So I was always interested in sports and that kind of pathway. I quickly realized in the PT realm that was not my shtick, and started applying to PA schools. And landed kind of a general orthopedic job out of school. The surgeon I worked with was kind of older and trained in the learn a little bit of everything mentality. So that was a great first job for me. I then kind of outgrew that job, so to speak, after a few years and moved on to a large medical center in a more specialized orthopedic capacity, working with a one-on-one with a joint replacement surgeon. And I was with him for 5 years, and through the COVID pandemic. Um, and as a lot of things that have been born out of the COVID pandemic, I decided to do something crazy and go back to get an online MBA at Northeastern University. And that kind of led me down the path of, do I want to explore something outside of clinical medicine? And we'll kind of talk, I imagine, later on about how I landed in the current job I'm at. I now work on the insurance side of things at BlueCross BlueShield of Mass, as the associate director for the Musculoskeletal Program. So that's kind of catching you up to date.
Yeah. So was this MBA something that you were thinking about for a while? Like, had it been on your radar before COVID and COVID made you pull the trigger? Or what was the thing that sort of said, it's time, I'm going to do this now with in the midst of a busy career with a young family that I'm going to invest the time and money in, furthering my education and getting this degree?
Yeah, so I really can't say for sure whether or not I would have done the MBA if COVID hadn't hit. So we had a large orthopedic department of 23 APPs, mostly PAs, and all but like two were redeployed during COVID, mostly to the ICUs and the emergency room to swab COVID patients in a large medical center in downtown Boston. So it was, I mean, I've been blessed to not have a very traumatizing life, but it was probably the most traumatizing thing I've done personally. And I had a 1-year old at home who obviously wasn't vaccinated, so it was tough, and it kind of shook me in a way that I didn't really anticipate. So I kind of at that time was like, all right, like let's create an exit strategy, but like a good one. Um, and I was heavily influenced by a PA I had worked with. Who was pretty brilliant in her own right, but she went back and got an MBA, and then like within a year landed like a director level job at a pharmaceutical company. And so I said, if she can do this, like this seems like a foolproof method. So that was kind of the inspiration for it.
Awesome, which is really the reason that I like to have people with this non-traditional career path on the show, because you saw someone do it. And when we see something, we say, hey, I could do that, right? I know it's a possibility. I saw someone do it. So I love that we get to use this platform to sort of amplify the number of people that see this as a possibility, or even have it on their radar to evaluate, hey, is this degree something that I should invest in, and what can I do with it? So, other than what you're doing now, were there other things that you considered, or what else can you do with an MBA that you couldn't do without it?
Yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost, I want to say that you don't need an MBA necessarily to like leave clinical medicine if that's something that's interesting to you, or to get a leadership role. I think there are a ton of other pathways. Higher education is one of them, um, but it's definitely not a necessity. And I think I would not recommend it with more than one child, because that's what ended up happening for the second half of my MBA, and it was tough. So no children, maybe consider it. But uh, sorry, say it again. So the question was,
Like, what else can you do other than like what you're
oh yeah,
doing?
sorry. So I strongly considered medical device. So I've been in orthopedics my whole career. I was like deeply in tune with the instrumentation used in the OR, and felt that I could work at a company that made those implants. And actually, kind of as I got down this path of getting close to a job offer, one was with Blue Cross, and the other was with Depew, who's a Johnson and Johnson company, in their commercial education department. So basically, teaching the representatives, the reps within the OR, how to use the instrumentation. So it'd be more of an education driven role, but with a ton of growth. That company is an excellent company, who values building their leadership up, kind of from grassroots. So um, medical device was kind of the one thing that I also strongly looked into. Just with my background, I don't think pharmaceuticals would be the best fit. A ton of the pharmaceuticals are, at least around here that I've investigated, are related to oncology or hematology, rare diseases. But if you kind of find yourself in that space, those would be great options too.
Yeah, I think, and especially each person has their own clinical specialty. So if you think, what have I done in the past? What specialty am I working in currently from a clinical aspect? And who do I interface with? So when I was in general surgery, there used to be a rep we did genetic testing on patients and we did genetic testing on tumors. So we would do these specific assays intraoperatively, or we'd send our path for that. So we had if there is a rep coming in, that rep works for someone. So if you're thinking, hey, what's next for me? Who do you interface with? Who shows up at your office? Who drops off donuts? Who like cares about you and what you're prescribing? That is a potential target for you if you're thinking, I don't want to be at the bedside forever. If you're working on that exit strategy, who cares about you? Because that person could be you or someone who's educating that rep about telling people about new pharmacology or new drugs. Those people could be educated by someone like you, given your clinical experience. So I think sometimes we miss it's right in front of us and we miss, these opportunities.
Yeah, and one other thing just came to mind that's kind of a new topic, and I think you've talked about it on previous shows, a medical science liaison. I mean, for me, that didn't quite fit my lifestyle. There's a lot of travel involved typically, but it's quite high paying. And it again kind of taps into the clinical expertise that you just kind of have as a PA in a certain subspecialty. So really, the possibilities are endless. With COVID, there's so many telemedicine companies and just startups in general that have popped up, that treat their employees well, and you can make a real impact in with basic PA knowledge.
So I would love to hear. I think everyone listening knows what like the baseline sort of is for someone practicing clinically. Like we've all been in rotations, we've probably almost all had a clinical position. What does it look like on the other side? Are you in meetings all day long? Like what do you actually do as a part of your role on the other side?
Well, I will say it was a little awkward leaving clinical medicine, and they'd be like, "So where are you going?" I'm like, "To the insurance company." They're like, "Oh, the dark side." Like, oh, geez. Um, and it's really not the dark side. I mean, yes, I think American healthcare is a very flawed system. I don't think anyone will argue that. That said, it's a great place to work. It's very mission driven. And the people are wonderful. And I think you still can make a very large impact with your work. So, yeah. So again, my role is I'm the associate director for the Musculoskeletal Program. And before I even got there, well before, like almost 2 years before, the company ran an analysis on should we run this program internally and keep it in house, or should we outsource it to a vendor company? Um, and they kind of ran the numbers and got the estimates, and they decided, okay, let's do this thing in house. And the main portion of the program, kind of the bread and butter, is utilization management. So what that basically does is determines, is a service necessary? Is it being done in the right setting? And if you manage that appropriately, you can do right by the member and save healthcare costs, which obviously, we're spending 17-18% of GDP as a nation. We need to cut down on healthcare costs. So the main part of my job is overseeing a UM program that puts a prior authorization. We all know about prior authorizations. Mostly it's an admin burden for us, but puts a prior authorization on musculoskeletal procedures. So that includes joint related surgeries. That's total knees, total hips, total shoulders, so total joints, scopes. Um, it also includes spine surgeries of all different types, and pain management. So various injections or spinal cord stimulators, things like that. So that's the prior auth that's on these surgeries, and we have 7 associates that report to me. They're nurses and physical therapists that do the actual medical necessity review for these procedures once they're submitted by the providers, and they do this through some training, but also through what's called like interqual. So it's basically an evidence-based software that kind of gives you a decision tree of, have they tried this? Do they have this? And it comes up with a decision of, yes, this is medically necessary, or no, it does not meet medical necessity criteria, and it should go to a secondary reviewer. In some cases, I can be the secondary reviewer. And in some cases, it needs to go to our physician review unit for a final denial or approval. So the vast majority of my day is answering clinical questions from my associates. Some of them have orthopedic backgrounds, but really, there's a lot of nuances in the clinical, and so they need an orthopedic perspective to be able to do their job.
When you are working in healthcare, it can be hard to see the forest for the trees. Are you burned out, or is this a normal reaction to the stress that you experience on a regular basis? Is this a problem or just a rough patch? The Burnout Risk Assessment is designed to help you determine your risk of burnout, identify your strengths, and help you to build boundaries. Click the link in the show notes or head to tracybingaman.com/burnout-quiz. Spend less than a minute of your busy day stratifying your own risk of burning out in a field where burnout is incredibly prevalent. You'll get your results and a list of resources and podcast episodes that can help you at any risk level for burnout. Find the link in the show notes. So you're not, I think you are involved part of administrating this program of prior auths and like that, but you're answering clinical questions. They're saying so-and-so is a 47-year-old female who has knee pain, blah, blah, blah. Has this been done? They're asking you about that.
Yep, exactly. There's a lot of that. There's some kind of questions within the system, like, oh, they have this benefit. They're out of state, like things that are less orthopedic driven, more system based. But a lot of it is orthopedic, which is fun for me. and I learn new things all the time. If I don't know the answer, I have to go look it up. So, it's a lot of discussion and collaboration. Um, and then some of the other kind of background parts of my job are building the program up to be kind of more well-rounded. So, creating a case management portion where we outreach to high-risk perioperative patients who are having a musculoskeletal procedure. Maybe we can prevent an infection or a readmission or a blood clot just because of the outreach we do. We incorporate different vendors, virtual physical therapy, virtual exercise therapy into the program and offer that. Yes, to save money and prevent unnecessary surgeries, but also to just give the members a more kind of comprehensive musculoskeletal experience. And so, yeah, I am in meetings all day. To answer your question, I am in meetings all day. But a lot of it is very productive meetings and, you know, um, one that I enjoy. So.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's this thing about like insurance companies that, like, when you say, I help with the prior auths, everyone listening to the show who clinically had a prior auth they had to call today was like, oh no, like, no. But also, I think we get it wrong when we vilify insurance companies for wanting to save money, because oftentimes the systems that help them to save money also help patients to avoid unnecessary imaging or redundant testing or things that aren't serving our patients either. So I don't think that like saving money and efficiently making sure patients are getting what they need is necessarily the bad thing. What we don't like is you have to make a phone call over your lunch break to get the thing authorized, which is really not an insurance company problem. Probably people are going to send me emails about this. That's a problem because you don't have admin time, right? So when you're clinical and you have to make those phone calls in between patients or on your lunch or when you're like in the car driving from one clinic to another, that's because you don't have good admin time in your schedule and you're overbooked and you're overburdened. So it's, no one loves a prior auth, but if you have admin time, prior auths are less frustrating.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think it does help that I sat on the other side and I would do those peer-to-peer reviews and like be frantic on the phone, like snarfing food. So to bring that perspective to the other side and help streamline the process. What reviews don't we need prior auth for? We just took away prior auth for home care. How can we streamline submission of a prior auth so that it auto approves on the portal, so that the PAs don't have to call? Like, there's so many different ways to make it more efficient. And I think if you didn't have PAs or clinical folks on both sides of the equation, you'd be stacking the deck against yourself, because then you don't have the right perspective to make any change.
Yeah, I think coming from a clinical perspective where you've had to make that phone call, if the person making decisions about barriers to getting it approved has sat on the other side, it does change your perspective. It's like, does this need to be a phone call? Does this need to, or can we submit it or approve it or, get it approved appropriately based on the information that we already have? Because with charts being electronic and the documentation the way it is now, it's not like we're sending you a handwritten soap note, right? Like, it's coming, how can we analyze it and streamline it so that we say like, yes, they did have this x-ray. Yes, they did try physical therapy. Yes, they did, whatever. If they check those boxes, that it doesn't have to generate a phone call. And that actually decreases the administrative burden of the clinician who's trying to get that surgery done or that patient, to have what they need.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to say, to give a full picture of what I do, the company wants to keep their clinicians clinical and up to date. And so they require the physician review unit and any PAs or NPs at the company to remain clinical at least once a month. So yesterday I had my clinical day. I was in the OR doing knee replacements, hip replacements with the surgeon I used to work with. And it's a great day. I mean, it's actually being a PA without any of the administrative hassle that you hate, all the messages and scripts and everything. So it's a wonderful balance for me. Once a month in the OR is kind of my dream. So perfect.
That's great. Yeah, come in and do the thing that you love and then get back to, regular business. So the question that is burning on my mind is it better on the other side? Is your quality of life better? Do you feel like you have more time with your family? Do you get to work remotely? Like, what are the great things? And is it a life where you have a better work-life balance or better boundaries now that you're working in an industry?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm a strong believer that there's like not a better necessarily. It's just where you are in your life and your life stage. So like when I got out of school, I was, I don't know, 26 or 7 years old or something. And like all I wanted to do was like operate all night and like learn as much as I could and just be like a badass. Like I just wanted to like do as much as I could and like absorb it. And so like if you worked me like a dog, like that was cool. Like that's what I wanted. Nights, weekends, overnight, like it didn't matter. Um, and then you know you do that for a few years and it becomes kind of routine and the kind of excitement wears off just a bit. And I started, I got married, I had my first kid, second kid, third kid. And so like, I'm at a point now where if I'm getting worked like crazy and standing, 15-hour days in the OR, it doesn't excite me anymore. So I'm in a phase of life where I want a routine. I want to be there for breakfast and dinner, and I want to, be able to eat lunch in peace. So it's better in the sense that it fits where I'm at in life. It does pay more than any PA job, which is nice. But that's to me almost a side because I would do this for less. Honestly, it's just it does give me the work life balance that I need right now. Right now we're fully remote. We actually got news about 2 weeks ago that I'm going to go back into the office on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, which is I have mixed emotions about. Part of me is okay with it because of human interaction, that thing. But yeah, it still gives quite a bit of work life balance. It's 8:30 to 4:30. I close my computer and I'm back to home.
That's beautiful. I think I have a lot of patients ask me that because I now work in aesthetics. And not only do I work in aesthetics, which is in and of itself just posh to begin with, but I work in aesthetics part time. So I now work 2.5 days a week clinically. And my patients will say, aren't you so happy? Isn't it so much better? And I will say that. I said, during this season of my life, being home for dinner is a really big priority of mine. So, and this job totally allows me to do that. I'm not getting emergency calls. I'm not taking call overnight. I'm not working weekends or holidays because it's office based. And all of those things are great. But if I was that 23-year-old me who graduated and wanted to do like perfed bowels in the middle of the night, like that was me. They would call. I have been doing this long enough that I had an actual pager, like sleeping with my pager on the nightstand, beep, 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 it's go off. And I would be like, yes, I'm going in. We're going to do an X-lap. We have an incarcerated hernia. There's dead bowel. Like I would get really excited about really bad shit happening inside the abdomen at 2 a.m. because I got to go and spread these cases. If you called me now at 2 a.m, I would be very unhappy about that. And like my life has changed, right? Like it's been 12 years. Things are different now than they were then. So I love that you're sort of highlighting, yeah, it's better for me for now, but that doesn't mean that it would be better for everyone at every different stage of their life and every different stage of what matters to them.
Yeah, for sure. It's like what's better, like going clubbing or sitting in cozy, hot chocolate and blanket on your couch watching a movie. It depends on what stage in life you're at, you know what I mean? Like right now a club is like the last thing I would ever want to do, but at a younger age maybe. So
Don't ask me to go
it
out
really
past
just
8
depends on
p.m.
where you're
on a
at.
weeknight. Yeah, I'm not going out. It's not happening. If I put my pajamas or my leggings on, I'm not leaving the house again, except for an emergency, which hopefully doesn't happen. So I would love to hear. So were you practicing clinically when you went back to school for this MBA? And then, so walk me through what that was like. And then how did you land this job? And how did networking play into that whole thing?
Yeah, so I did it online. And it was a great program. It was completely asynchronous. So the way they set it up, and it's actually changed since then. But the way they set it up then was they had it in 5-week blocks where you took one course and you basically just like flew through it. Each day there was a different assignment, like due that day. But you could listen to the lecture on your own time, and do the assignments on your own time. There was discussion boards and you had to participate. But it was truly like a 5 a.m. and 7 p.m. type of gig. Like I would do like an hour in the morning and then I would like get home and try to do like 2 hours at night. And that was kind of like my routine. And I tried to set aside like one weekend day where I could like pretty much not work on anything, but it didn't always happen. So yeah, it was completely, while I was working, full time. And so networking played in, kind of as a necessity. So I was about a year into my MBA and I said, okay, like I'm going to start applying to jobs now. I think I have the background where someone's going to want me. And I never really had a hard time applying to PA jobs. So I was like, oh, like it's the same thing with business. It should just kind of flow naturally. And looking back on it, like the way that I applied to PA jobs, which is basically just like the like search and click and apply approach, like it's kind of amazing that the employers I was at were as good as they were. Like I feel really lucky that that was the case, because when you apply to a job like in that fashion, you might get like a half-hour interview with an attending or an office manager or HR, but like you really don't know anything about the role. Like you don't know the culture, you don't know who your colleagues are, you don't know how stressed you're going to be. Kind of like this like framework, but you don't know like anything about like the job and how it's going to like make you feel. And so I applied to a lot of jobs. Like I'd say like anything that like could have been a fit, like for medical device, for pharma, for insurance, for anything, I just like hit apply. Like I'm embarrassed by how many times I applied to jobs, and it was really humbling because like for like 2 or 3 months that I did that. By the way, that was kind of like my first use of LinkedIn, which is a whole nother topic, where like PAs really should be effectively using LinkedIn. But I think I either created my account then or like it came back to life then. I really hadn't used it before then. But I applied to so many jobs and I was so humbled because I did not get a single interview doing that. So I went to my wife and I'm like, what am I doing wrong? And she's like, well, are you doing it the right way? I'm like, well, maybe you're right. Like, I don't think I am. So I like hit reset and I was determined that I would really lean into like establishing human connections and establishing trust and networking. And so like I went to my parents and I went to my parents' friends, and I would say I had about 50 different informational interviews with just about anyone who would be willing to talk to me. Just trying to get little like nuggets of like help along the way. And that was over like a 6-month period, just talking like my wife was like, you're going downstairs again? I'm like, yeah, I need to talk to someone. Like I set this up. Um, and so through like a very like kind of convoluted pathway, I ended up talking to the current hiring manager, so my current boss right now. And it was right around the time where the company had decided, yes, let's keep this program in-house. And so she was kind of like, I could see her light bulb kind of going off like, oh, you're an orthopedic expert. Like you're okay to talk to. Okay. And so she's like, let's be in touch. There's nothing right now. I can't really divulge too much about what's happening, but like, I think there's going to be something down the pipeline. So every month I would just touch base with her. We'd catch up a little bit just on email. And then finally I got an email being like, Aaron, like, keep a lookout. Like in the next week or two, we're going to post a job. It should be a really good fit for you. I think you'd be a strong candidate. And so to me, just reading the job posting, like I was kind of their guy. Like I almost believe that they fit that job description like for me. And so, I really have networking to thank for that entire thing.
Time marches on, and as we age, we are losing collagen at a rate of 1 to 2% per year. Collagen is the single most abundant protein in our bodies, and it's necessary for healthy bones, radiant skin, resilient muscles, and well-functioning joints. To combat the loss of collagen, I've been using Liquid BioCell Oral Collagen from Modere. I love this liquid collagen so much that I decided to partner with Modere to offer you $10 off your first order. Use the link in the show notes to redeem your discount today. Yeah, I have had, and this is clinical, but I have had experiences where I've been talking to someone and they've been like, hey, we really want you on our team, but but that position that you saw online was just filled, or that's outpatient and we want you inpatient. And they were just like, hang tight, give me 2 weeks, we're going to post it. And then you're immediately like, first of all, you're already top of mind because they created this position with you in mind. Second of all, you're like waiting, right? They know, it's coming. They know you're waiting for it. So you're like, I'm ready to pounce on this. They already know you. You already have like pre-credentialed yourself to be top of the pile when they start taking applications. So then they would be like, it's open. And I would be like, I'm applying immediately. And then it was like, I don't even know if they interviewed other people or if it was just like, this was sort of created based on the conversation that we had at that symposium 3 weeks ago. And now you're here, just like we said, and like, here we go. It's a lot of that sort of talking and not being discouraged when the first conversation doesn't lead to a job. Like rarely is it just like that. Oh yes, I know the person who's going to hire you. It's usually, I know the person who once worked with a person whose cousin is going to hire you. It's never like direct and easy when you're doing this.
Yeah, it's like planting little seeds, and then occasionally like one seed will sprout into like a nice big tree, and then you get that job. But there's just so many benefits to networking the right way and to doing it actively. Um, you really get to know more about the company, more about the operations, your role, the stakeholders, and the culture of the company. There's just so many things that you don't get by just blindly applying. And you can get lucky and hit like an awesome job by blindly applying, but it's hard. And then we don't even factor in a lot of the jobs that you blindly apply to. The hiring manager for that role has already networked with someone else, and they're just fulfilling their duty to post it. They're not actually considering external candidates, or so it's just such a tough thing to kind of search and apply to jobs. And I just really think that if you do it the right way, you can just set yourself up to get a better job, very predictably higher paying job, and one that you're more likely to thrive in and be willing to stay in for a long time.
Yeah. And I think we should be networking all the time, not just when we're looking to make a move. So, right now you're like, I'm pretty happy. Things are going pretty well. Like still, when you see someone, say hello, sit down and talk to them. Like a lot of my networking conversations happened like in the PACU, in the cafeteria, it wasn't formal. It wasn't a formal networking event. It was, I now work for a surgeon whose kids used to go to my kids' daycare, and we would drop off at the same time every day. He also happened to operate at my hospital on the same day as I did with one of my general surgeons. And so I was just like, I think that was just like immersion therapy. Like I was like, here I am every day. I'm dropping my kids off. Here I am every Wednesday. I'm in the PACU. And so when he said, what do PAs make working in plastic surgery? I first said, I'll email you some stuff. And then I second said, why? Right? Like, why are you asking that question? And he said, I want to hire someone to cover my call. And I was like, I'll do it immediately. Like, I'll do it. And he's like, really? I didn't think you'd be interested. I don't think he would have asked me, specifically. He was seeking information from me. He wasn't offering me a position, right? He was like, I want to know how much to pay someone else. And I was like, you can pay me. I'll send you some information, right, about that. That was years ago. And I worked as a contractor with him before I worked full time there. So all of these things are like, you are surrounded by opportunities to make a move, to make a change. And I really want to highlight, you said this earlier, you were like, hey, COVID happened. It was really disruptive. Like clinically, I wasn't seeing, that I wanted to continue in this way. And you said, I needed an exit strategy. I think everyone needs an exit strategy, not necessarily from clinical medicine, but from your current position, right? Where are you going next? What do you want to be doing? How can you use where you are as a launching point to get you to where you want to be, and when? Right? Like, you want to stay 2 years, you want to stay 10 years, you want to get out. Like, when? Because then you can start to network strategically, not just like, I'm going to talk to anyone, anywhere about anything. Like, no, if you're in internal medicine and you want to do rheumatology, like, I want to network with people who are doing this. I want to get in the rooms that those people are in. I want to connect with those specific people and start showing up. And this, I think clinically, obviously, I feel very passionate about this, but like, this is like, you can do this clinically, and this is going to sound very strange, but like, clinically, you can be networking disguised as like really good patient care with like good communication, right? So like, when I was in general surgery and I had a patient, I would like CC the primary care doc on my note and say like, thank you so much for sending Mr. Smith to us for fixing his hernia. He did great. His wife is so sweet. He's home. He's doing great. Like just like really taking good care. And like, that's like just good to do, right? If you have the time and bandwidth to do that. But also, like, if you're interfacing with a person you want to work with someday about a patient, like, be on your A game, like, make a good impression with that person. Cause like later when you see them and you're looking for a job, they're going to think, oh, he's really good. She's really good. Like, I remember this interaction. I remember this person being superior clinically. That's the kind of person I want to work with me. Like, it's a little self-serving. It's also never bad to like communicate well with your referring providers, but like, be on the lookout for opportunities to just impress other people with what you're doing for your patients.
Yeah, and like I totally agree. And you don't want to sound like a broken record, and you might feel like that sometimes. But like when I was in the deepest depression of not being able to find a job, like I would just kind of talk to anyone. And so the way that I actually managed to land an interview session with my hiring manager was we were at a barbecue, and my wife's first cousin was chatting me up, and he said, "So how's your job?" And I told him, "It's okay. I'm kind of actually looking at Depew, the J&J company." And he's like, "Oh, I have a friend who works there." So I talked with him, and he said, "We're not hiring right now, but my wife works at Blue Cross." So I spoke with her. And then she said, "Well, why don't you talk to this other physician who actually is more close to the hiring process?" So I talked with him, and then he finally referred me to the hiring manager. So it was this like stepwise approach, but you just have to be open about talking about yourself, which is not something PAs like to do. We don't like to be salesmen-y. But when you're doing a job search or a job interview, you have to think like a salesman or a saleswoman, and you have to have a sales pitch and an elevator pitch, and you have to have reasons why you're awesome and why they should hire you. It's a little awkward at first to nail that down, but the more you practice, like the more like natural it becomes.
Yeah. I often say, like, if you're pitching yourself for something, think about how your work best friend, like your work wife or your work husband, how would they describe you, right? Like, she's amazing, like, positive attitude, like, always on time, patients love her, like, super reliable, physicians always want her in the OR, like, whatever it is, what would they say about you? Because we're not good about bragging about ourselves. And as you were saying that, I'm thinking, I got my first job in general surgery because I played on our PA school team's volleyball team, which was coached by our PA program director. And it was the end of the season, and we had won the championship. Not important to the story at all, but feels important to say. My husband happened to be on the opposing team that we beat. And so began our love story. No, and we won the championship, and our director's like, come back to our house, which is right up the street from the gym. We're going to have a barbecue. We're going to jump in the hot tub. We're going to blah, blah, blah. We're like probably 6 months before graduation, sitting in the hot tub, and my director says, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "I'm really interested in surgery, and I'm thinking about staying in the area." And she goes, "Okay, get in the car." I'm in an actual swimsuit. I have a towel on. She drives 3 houses down the road and introduces me to her neighbor, who is an anesthesiologist who works at this small community hospital, who says, "I was just in the OR last week, and Dr. Hoover was talking about how he wanted to hire a PA for general surgery." And I was like, what is happening? Like, what is happening? And that was my first job. That was my first job from like in a swimsuit. I didn't meet him in a swimsuit. I was well dressed for the interview, but still.
So you took the networking route from the beginning. So kudos to you. I mean, I just did the apply to 50 schools, get 3 interviews, and take whatever job is offered to you. So I much prefer your direction.
Yeah. In my experience, if you network, you are talking to people in a way that is informal. And when you're talking to people and just like, hey, we just have a 15-minute call, we're going to hop on, we're going to chat, or I'm at this, mixer, or we're in this hot tub or wherever, the people will tell you things that are more what you were talking about, like, how is it to work there? Like, how is it to work with him or her? Or is the group, great? And they'll say, like, yeah, the orthopedic group is great. But every time the surgeon walks in, he has a different PA with him because they all quit after 6 months. So, like, you don't get that in the interview. And that piece of information is important. Like, you want to know that before you take a job. So, even if you're just like, I applied, I got an interview, here I am in the office, like, ask the front desk how the providers are, like, ask the nurses how they're treated in the office. Does this person run on time? Are we here late often? Like, are they efficient? Because all of those things will clue you in on like how it feels to work there, which I think is what we're missing a lot of the time when we don't really know what we're getting into.
Totally agree.
About a job. So I want to one more thing to talk about before we wrap up. I want to focus on how to find your niche and why this matters. So a lot of people out there just sort of like, they applied, then they change specialties, and they're just sort of following the flow. Is this something we need to be intentional about? How do we define our niche? And why does this matter for PAs who are either in industry or practicing clinically?
Yeah, so earlier I mentioned that you don't need an MBA to make an exit strategy, or to get a promotion, or a higher paying job. And I think the best way that you can do that without higher education, is through finding your niche. You say niche, I say niche. It's okay. But yeah, so again, an analogy. Like if you think of yourself as a PA applicant as a small business, you're trying to find your way into the world and you're trying to grab market share. And like every marketing class in the world is going to teach you that you need to differentiate your business in some way. You can't be the same as the store next door. It's just nothing's going to stand out. Why would anyone go to you instead of them? And so, it could be in the business world offering the product cheaper or in some newer, faster way. As a PA, there's a few ways that you can do it. One is just to have a specialty that no one else has really. So like if you're like a pediatric surgical oncology PA, who specializes in this rare form of cancer, like, yeah, like you don't really need any other differentiation. Like that's pretty good. And you can market that and that set of skills. Um, but for me, I found myself in orthopedic surgery, which I believe is like the most common surgical specialty of all PAs. Like maybe like 15% of PAs do orthopedic surgery or something. So I found myself kind of asking myself, like, what could I do to stand out and be like the next best applicant out there? And so the route that I took to differentiate myself was to take a class in ultrasound. So it was a pretty comprehensive class. It came with a certificate and everything and CME credits and all that. And I bought a big old textbook and I practiced. And then when I went to the medical center and worked with a hip and knee surgeon, every single patient that I had hip or knee arthritis and wanted injections. And so I was doing, I want to say, up to 400 hip injections under ultrasound guidance a year. And if you kind of multiply that by the CMS, reimbursement for an ultrasound guided hip injection 20611, it's a pretty good revenue for my employer. So with the injections, which no other PA in the entire hospital did, I differentiated myself in two ways. One was to make more money than your average PA. PAs in orthopedic surgery in general are a net loss for the organization. They make money in secondary ways by freeing up the provider, by first assisting and such. But overall, it's not going to add up to their 100 grand salary. Um, but when you bring in 50 grand plus in just injections, now you have a leg to stand on. And then the other way was through patients just like loving the service. So my patient satisfaction score went through the roof because previously they had to go to a radiologist who would do it under fluoroscopy. They would inject the dye, it would hurt, it would take 15 minutes to do. And they would just see me in the office setting. 2 minutes later, their hip felt great, and they would walk out and they'd say, "See you in 3 months." So kind of differentiating myself in those two ways really gave me some like bargaining power, where I could kind of, it's like being the top salesman in a company. You can kind of ask for what you want. You can ask for a higher salary. You can ask for, let me have a half day of admin time, which I did. And so I just think finding that and carving that out in whatever specialty you're in is just so important and worthwhile. Even if it's going to take you 3 years to get there, like see that long vision and like just go for it, because it's going to really improve your quality of life and kind of your overall package.
Yeah. And so I've done a couple episodes on sort of knowing your objective value and like, what are you tracking revenue wise? What are you bringing in? Are they, making money off of you? If you are in a medical specialty, oftentimes you can be making as much, if not more, in billing, depending on your complexity of patients and the number of patients you see in a day, than your physician colleagues. So once you know that, then you have bargaining power to be saying, hey, you're still getting a great deal on me because it's less than what you're paying a physician, but more than what you're paying my colleagues, because this is what I'm producing, because this is what I'm worth, because they love data and administrators love to track things. So like RVUs and, your patient volumes, all of those are super awesome to know. And I think those are sort of like the hard skills, like what you're talking about, like I clinically am doing something different. I'm, tracking this in a different way, versus the soft skills of like, my patients love me. Like they'll wait to see me, they'll request me, they're referring people to our practice. And even I'm getting them in sooner, right? The physician is booked out 12 weeks and they can see me this week. That means that patient won't call around and go elsewhere. So we're capturing that revenue because they're getting in the door. So sort of thinking about.
And you mentioned PCPs. I used to have PCPs email me saying, "Hey, I heard you're a PA that does hip injections. Like, I've had a bunch of patients that say you do it better than other people. Like, do you mind if I send someone to you?" So I would like get direct referrals. So there's so much value in finding that little area where you kind of do something better than other people. It's not easy to find always, but they're out there, and you just got to kind of do your homework and invest in it. You got to invest in yourself, and you got to invest in those skills, soft and hard.
Yeah. And I think this is something that people working around you might have more insight into. If you're like, what's my niche? Like ask your colleagues, like, what am I known for? Like, what do you see me, doing? Because they'll tell you. I feel like I'm bragging about myself a lot on this podcast, but I'm feeling very confident today. So it's coming out. This is so weird. I got a job with a surgeon who hired me because I had previously worked with another surgeon who was difficult to deal with. And like they saw me navigating, working with the surgeon who had never had a PA before, who had never had a partner before because they were just hard to tolerate, which I didn't know because I didn't network to get that job. I just blindly applied and I got it. And I stayed probably 3 years in that position and I handled that well. And so they reached out and said like, hey, we have a position at our office. You handled that really well. We would like to offer you this position. I knew you could do this job well because of the way that you handled this. Like, and I was like, honestly, I was just like trying to survive, right? Like I was just navigating that relationship with the one surgeon, one PA practice, but like that was observed by someone else. And like they credited me for that when they went to hire me for something else. So you never know what it is that's going to differentiate.
If you can handle that curmudgeon, you can handle anything.
Literally. They were like, our patient population is very particular. We saw you handle that person well for 3 whole years. You can handle your patients in your room for 15 to 30 minutes. So come on over. That's super awesome. So I would love for you to tell us how you're serving PAs who are sort of listening to this and saying, that sounds good. The other side sounds good. I'm interested in pursuing a career outside of clinical medicine, but I don't know where to start. And how can I do that?
Yeah. So go for it. First of all, if you want to contact me directly, I did just a month ago, and imposter syndrome is real. But I just started kind of like an entrepreneurship type deal where it's called On Point Providers. You can find me at onpointproviders.com. My email is aaron.block@onpointproviders.com. And it focuses on kind of everything we've talked about: career coaching, guiding PAs towards meaningful career paths, whether that be, advocating for yourself for a higher salary, leaving clinical medicine, if that's something that's interesting to you. And I hope to, in the next 3 to 6 months, depending on how my kids cooperate, have a few courses out there that are digestible, quick and easy to take home and do on your own time, that I think will really kind of set PA career paths in the right way, and kind of meet them where they are. So feel free to reach out to me at any time. I'd love to talk.
Awesome. Well, Aaron, thank you so much. I know your time is very valuable, so I appreciate you taking the time to come on the show and share with us your story and your wisdom around these topics.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
I love anytime we have a guest on the show that reminds us that they didn't do it perfectly the first time. When Aaron shared about how his networking was non-existent and he applied for all of those jobs and got 0 callbacks, to turning that around to actively networking to find a dream position that works for him and his family in this season, that is the kind of story that I want to highlight on The PA is In. So if that is you, if you have a non-traditional career path, if you have a great before and after, if you used to be burned out and now you're not, we want to hear what you did and how you changed. So send us an email to themoneypa@gmail.com to throw your name in the hat to be a potential future guest on the show. I hope that you enjoyed this conversation with Aaron and I, and that you feel more inspired and more informed about what PAs are doing in the industry and whether or not you need a degree in order to do that. That's all for today. This PA is out. Congratulations, you've just joined an awesome club. By listening to a full episode of The PA is In, you are officially on the Unicorn PA team. Welcome aboard. What most team members do is they subscribe to the podcast because that allows them to automatically get the latest episode of the show. The life of your dreams exists on the other side of taking action. Keep making small shifts and keep getting better. Your life will improve, your career will soar, and you will have the confidence you need to create your own success. I will see you in the next episode. This PA is out.